Brandon, once again, thanks for joining us. I've talked to Keith a little bit about your experience and story, but looking forward to hearing about it firsthand. So maybe if you just want to start by, you know, telling us a little bit about your career and your, creative work, and then also sort of, your experience with copyright law and infringement. That'd be, I think, really helpful for us to hear.
Yeah, so my name is Brandon Clement. I am a professional storm chaser and videographer. I work with news outlets throughout the US, as well as my own social media platform and building my own brand, which is called WxChasing. I have been doing this for full time for almost a decade now. I started chasing storms almost 30 years ago. It was an intense hobby that became quite expensive over time. I had a auto glass business I had started. Over time, it became apparent that I needed to either earn money doing this hobby or I needed to quit doing it as much. I'm very passionate about weather. I did not want to stop doing it. So I figured out if I picked up a camera and started making videos and building a niche market out of this, that there was a way I could make money. Well, in 2014, I started setting goals for myself, would achieve those goals really quickly in the year. And about 2016, I realized I think I can do this. So I jumped off, sold my glass business, went full time with storm chasing, and just started building a business. Of course, the first 2 years, just like any business, had some difficulties with getting over the hump financially. But I was able to really in the 2017, 2018 time period kind of start making a name for myself. Really started to deliver quality, speed, everything the news markets look for. I hit a couple of really big moments in 2018. One was a volcano in Kilauea. I recorded some lava that came over the top of the road and consumed a Mustang and an R2D2 mailbox that just went absolutely viral. And that's when I also became a target for pirates. And the more success I have now, just seems like the more I make money for pirates. I can't, I've hit a ceiling where I can't financially move to the next level. I can't build my business. I can't jump off onto different types of works I would like to do because I'm being pirated. I'm now losing over 90% of my revenue to piracy. I don't sleep at night. When I wake up in the morning, every day I wake up, it's like walking into my shop full of thieves. It consumes my life. I've done more than 400,000 DMCA takedowns. I have filed lawsuits on 3 different continents, hundreds of lawsuits. I go after these people repeatedly in any way I can. I am being handcuffed by current legislation, and we're running into some major roadblocks with the social media and giant tech companies who have their thumb on the scale and are making tens of billions of dollars per quarter each. Much of that comes from copyright infringement. So when we're doing these takedowns, they're constantly shifting the goalposts. They are um, changing what they consider repeat infringer from day to day, depending on the sizes of the channels. They are refusing to take content down. Some are declaring fair use where they have no legal standing to do so. Some are um, delaying takedowns. Most are allowing or submitting. So if you do a bunch of takedowns against one channel, they'll make 2 of them go through. So it's like, hey, you're not quite going to get shut down. And then they'll put a delay on the next 14 days before they action the rest of them, allowing the channel to go in and delete all of their content. And once they delete it, after a legal process has been started, they consider the matter resolved. It's been a constant fight and battle. It leaves me in tears. It leaves me with a tremendous amount of anxiety. It's tries to send me down this hole of depression. It's just a really awful place to be. I know I'm losing this battle. The laws aren't protecting me. The laws that exist are capable of protecting me, but they're allowing the fox in the hen house. And I'm the target. I'm a typical US business. There's a lot of other US businesses like me, and we're all targets from foreign bad actors that wake up in the morning every morning with the intention of stealing money from us. They go to bed at night with the intention of waking up the next morning to steal money from us. No matter how many times you hit them, catch them, the scales are tipped so far one way that it's impossible for us to continue to do business on a normal basis.
Thank you for sharing that, Brandon. We couldn't be more sympathetic. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I think one of the things, at least to me, that's really interesting about your particular line of work and story is like the content that you create, the videos and photographs, is like really what sometimes is called like perishable content, where it's really um, sought after, desired, like in the first few days after a natural disaster or whatever. And, by the time you maybe are successful in getting it taken down, that window of you potentially monetizing it has passed in a lot of circumstances, which isn't, necessarily the same for all types of videos or content. I guess one of my questions I would have is, what platforms or services do you have you primarily sent takedown notices to? Um, is there one more than other that you are encountering infringement? Is it all across the board?
Well, each platform's a little bit different. And yeah, so 90% of my views happen within the first 24 hours of the content. Not just because it is news related, because I do shoot some evergreen content and it's a similar pattern. We see these analytics that go straight up, elbow off, and just flatline. They just die. And you can relate that little curve where it flatlines. You can start seeing that's where the theft starts picking up. So the thieves don't care about content that doesn't perform. So if it's doing really well, then they have systems in place that recognize, hey, this content's going viral. It's doing really well. That's when they start stealing it. As soon as they start stealing it, there's a hard flat line. You can directly see the correlation, and you can see it over and over again. So the different platforms I use, I really don't want to use some platforms like X, Twitter. It just the monetization's horrible. The piracy's horrible. Telegram, same thing. True Social, it's just all cesspools of regurgitated crap, right? So I really don't want my content on there. The problem is I have a gun to my head. If I don't put my content on there, somebody else will, and they'll benefit even more. And it's a constant battle to. I'm sitting in a disaster. I've got 4 different cell phone services and Starlink and everything else up working. And I have to sit there and now put my content on social media platforms where I don't even want them. I don't want it there. But I've got to do it just to limit the piracy and their success on those platforms. And then you'll have people like Elon Musk who will publicly come out and say, hey, we're not going to stand for copyright infringement, and then encourage the people who submitted a false counter notification to put the content behind a paywall on Twitter so he can make even more money off of it. So I mean, it's definitely a problem on all platforms, but on YouTube, we've identified channels that are using AI and misinformation, and not just one, a bunch. We've notified YouTube. We've notified YouTube's legal counsel. We have submitted DMCA takedowns, and YouTube has done everything in their power to defend these people. They'll take 300-400 clips. They'll put it into an AI editing program. Tell AI we want a 48-minute video. We want 35 different variations of it. And then every day they'll post that one of the variations. It's the same exact clips in every video. And every single time they'll come in 2 minutes ago, exclamation point. New York City burning to the ground. These outrageous headlines with these thumbnails that show a giant wave coming over a city with Photoshop people in that are like trying to run with jets crashing in the background. I mean, it's absurd. It's so insane. But they're like literally claiming these massive natural disasters are happening to major metro cities all around the world or countries all around the world with the same exact content, claiming it happened 2 minutes ago when some of this content is 20 years old. Okay. and generating hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars per channel with hundreds of channels. Now, we identified all these channels. We documented every single one. We did takedowns. At first, YouTube's takedown policy was 3 strikes, you're out. Then it became copyright school, then 3 strikes, you're out. Then it became copyright school, 3 strikes, you're out, and they have to come from multiple accounts. Well, then we have a bunch of different clients, so we hit them from a bunch of different client accounts. So then we did that, and YouTube said, "Oh, you're all acting together, so you're considered one now." So we have no power to take these channels down that repeatedly rip from us. And when we did get counter notifications and get these people to submit to jurisdiction in the U.S. and filed lawsuits, Google hired counsel to defend them. So it's not like this is a situation where we are going after bad people with a fair system in place. This is not just barely touching that scale and putting that thumb on it. They are pressing as hard as they can go. And this is just YouTube. Meta, they have a takedown system in place. We've had 72. We've had one channel, I think 103 takedowns on, and the channels still live. They continue to take our stuff. We've done literally hundreds of thousands of takedowns on Meta. They allow for channels to have 4, 5, 6,000 pages all set up in their one system where they can upload one video one time and spread it across 5,000 channels simultaneously. TikTok takes weeks to answer a counter note or a DMCA takedown. They require you to now, if you want to upload pirate material to TikTok, it's really easy. But if you want to claim a DMCA takedown for it, you've got to go do the research. You've got to put in all the information for the DMCA takedown, and then they come back and ask you to take a picture of you logging in and doing some really stupid stuff to make it as complicated as possible to do the takedowns. And again, by the time the takedown happens, you've lost all of the revenue. All right. They get the people stealing the content get to keep the revenue. The social media platform gets to keep the revenue. The only person that doesn't make any money off the content is the person who owns it. And in any other aspect of our civilization that is so fraudulent on a massive scale, but somehow it's okay for us, just like it's okay for news agencies to go ask disaster victims for free video using specialized jargon like perpetual rights with distribution. So they take that video from them. They think they're just sharing the video on their social media. They say share, but they re-upload it, send it to distribution centers, make tens of thousands of dollars off of somebody that just lost their home. And it's just a really, really, really broken system right now that favors. I mean, knowing what I know now, I could easily just slip into the cracks of the dark and start up a bunch of pages and make millions of dollars on even my own content if I had no morals, where I can just put whatever I want. But I mean, I could steal other people's content. It's so easy. It's so easy.
Yeah, I've seen the on X when someone will even just post a picture of like a nice looking rainbow or something. Immediately the news agencies come in and the replies, "Oh, will you grant me, permission to use this and this and that?" And everybody sort of just swarms in and wants, to take that picture.
Yeah, and they're not just taking it; they're putting it into subscription services that hit thousands of newsrooms.
Mhm.
So the next problem I have is this new thing that's come out and more recently on all the social media platforms, from YouTube to Facebook to TikTok to half a dozen others, Instagram. It is called remixing. So what it allows is basically similar to Napster. Okay. It allows people to take content, they upload it, they can turn remixing on, then it allows anybody else in the world to come in and take that content. They're allowing people to monetize it. I'm seeing now even some news distributors, some of your big name news distributors have pseudo accounts. They'll spin up a 5-minute account. They will take content, they will turn remixing on, and then they will go in from their news account and remix it. So they are saying, "Oh, we didn't take it. This account did with 3 followers that just randomly popped up 3 minutes before that video did." So it's separating with liability, and this isn't just news agencies; these are big channels too. Barstool Sports was a big expose on them doing something similar on Twitter. It's just so ridiculous. It's insanity.
Sorry, the remix feature you just mentioned, is that offered by a specific platform, or is that like a separate sort of technology that anyone can use, like across platform?
It's offered by YouTube. It's offered by Instagram,
Okay.
Facebook, TikTok. TikTok may call it stitching or other things like that,
Right.
but
They
uh,
just changed the name a little bit, but it's the same idea.
it's it's the same idea. They allow people, anybody. There's no verification process. Um, the monetization process is really easy, particularly if you're ripping stolen content. You can get monetized off of one viral video, and there's no real accountability. Any other place in this world, if you're transferring money to random people, there's got to be some type of documentation for it. And there's just not. There's just not in this realm. I mean, even Bitcoin is more secure than, or cryptocurrency is more secure than monetization on social media. And look, a lot of people don't really understand social media, particularly our legislators and some of the many in the judicial system. They don't understand. They think, hey, social media is something their kids do. But what they're not seeing is that Meta and TikTok and Google account for more than 50% of the marketing in the world. You're talking hundreds of billions of dollars a year. This is way bigger than broadcast. It is by far the most dominant way to market. But in this process, these social media companies, they need to serve ads. That's how they make money. In order to serve ads, they have to have content. In order to serve that content, um, they need people that are posting it. So content is king. Without the content, none of it exists. And they are willing to turn a blind eye to the copyright infringement for their own benefit and their own profits.
Yeah, it seems that, we say this all the time, when we bring up issues like DMCA and just the need for tech companies um, to implement better policies and to provide better tech responses. Honestly, it seems pretty disingenuous for them to place the burden back on copyright owners just because, you're the tech company, you know how to do tech. This shouldn't be that difficult for you to do, but like you point out, at the end of the day, it is very much they're looking out for their businesses and their own users and stuff like that.
They're looking
Um,
out for their own bottom line. That's
exactly,
really the only thing they're
exactly,
looking out for. Now,
exactly.
Google they say their DMCA system is transparent. So Google search feature in 4 months this year had 1 billion DMCA takedowns. So on one side of the table, they are like, oh, it's so overwhelming. We can't keep up with it. On the other side of the table, it's their own policies that are allowing it to happen. And they're making they're being afforded the opportunity to be sheltered from copyright policies and IP policies by the law, which gives them the opportunity to make hundreds of billions of dollars a year. But then on the other side of the table, they're complaining that they can't keep up with it because they've only got 3 people in the whole department. And it's
Right. And something we talk about a lot is the idea of stay down instead of take down. And if they actually implemented an effective takedown policy where content stayed down once it was taken down, then they wouldn't get billions after upon billions of notices because the content would stay down. But as you said, it's in their interest to keep that stuff up, keep eyeballs on their site for their bottom line. Um,
yeah, and it's a class system in place too. So they treat large accounts way different than small accounts. Okay. So the law is not applying equally here. Major music labels and movie producers have access to tools that somebody like I do not have. Okay. They are able to protect their content because these tech companies realize that these people are big enough to come after us. Where me, how do I sue Google? And look, I'm not trying to single out Google or Meta or TikTok. It's all of them. And I've been doing my best, and I've been very vocal with Google. I want to support your platform. I need your help supporting me. That's all I'm asking for. It's like this content would not exist for you to make money off of if you put me out of business. But they're so worried about their short-term profits that they're unable to see the long-term vision here, right? So it's just it's. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And the people behind this, it goes from petty piracy to heads of state to Cambodia's advertising right now to their population that there is a wonderful opportunity to make money on social media to help stimulate their economy by stealing content. I mean, you've got entire governments out there coming after us. It would be like if I had a business and next door to my business was another company, a drive-through that starts running 99-cent hamburgers, every day from 9 to 5. Well, during my business hours, their drive-through is blocking my driveway 24/7. Okay. And then somehow assuming it's my responsibility to figure it out. They are creating a workload that is impossible. And I say it's impossible. I work 18 to 20 hours a day. It's insane. There is no life. So I'm either out chasing storms, capturing weather, doing charity operations, or doing copyright. There's no break. There's nothing. And I'm never getting caught up on copyright. I have 4 employees. They all handle copyright. I don't have a social media manager. I don't have an editor. I don't have a booker. I don't have anybody help me with logistics. I don't have anybody help me with equipment. I don't have anybody help me do my car. There's tons of things I could do. And the amount of money that's being absorbed from me is preventing me from going to that next level in a way that's huge. And what we're trying to do is be different. Okay. There's a lot of bad taste for your mainstream media right now. What we're trying to do is not hype, trying to be on the ground in real time and giving people real time information and real stories and impacts. That's what's happening. And then we also make it a very big priority to always leave a positive footprint. The last Hurricane Beryl, were in Kiriakou. The island got completely devastated. We were able to get in. We were the only media people there, only storm chasers there. I brought in a Starlink terminal. After this Category 4, almost Category 5 hurricane devastates the island, we're the only people on the whole island with comms. We're the only people that can talk to the outside world. It was such a big deal. All the towers got collapsed, even ham radio. There was nothing. There was no outside contact. I had the Prime Minister of Grenada call me at 10 p.m. on WhatsApp. Like, hey, you're the only person we've been able to get in touch with on the whole island. Can you give me an assessment? We had flown the drone over the whole island, told them where the problem spots were, what was it, told them the runway was clean, they can land planes. The airport's destroyed, but the runway's clean. Told them the dock terminal is clean, you can get in there. We went up the next morning to their FEMA equivalent headquarters and set up the Starlink to allow them to contact the government in Grenada and start coordinating a response. Gave them a few minutes to do that. Then we moved and went to the hospital where the roof was ripped off and they had patients and understaffed and water leaking through the roof, and allowed them to communicate, say, hey, this is what we need when you come bring this. Then we went around the shelters with the Starlink, open it up, have people call their family members for the first time, say, hey, we're alive. And it's super emotional calls, and it's so hard for me to talk about because I mean, it's a special moment to be able to help people that way, but at the same time, it's trauma, man. It's trauma seeing people deal with that. And that's the type of impact we're doing. We want to be able to come in, we want to go in and rebuild a whole neighborhood. If we're able to capture our views and capture the money that comes to us, we want to go back and give back in ways that we can rebuild houses for people that lost it. But we can't do that thing. Okay. We can't do that stuff. That money is going to Pakistan. That money is going to Russia to fund a war. That money is going to China. Okay. That money is not coming to us. And it's disgusting that we keep dealing with this problem and the legislators aren't making a difference and aren't helping us fix this.
So if I could ask you, you mentioned earlier, how some of the larger content copyright owner organizations like record labels, they have access to tools and they also have leverage that individual creators don't because they can bring lawsuits and can and will. But you mentioned earlier, you yourself have brought lawsuits. If you're willing and able to talk about it, could you maybe discuss some circumstances where you've decided that the DMCA was not working and you needed to take that next step to file a lawsuit?
Yeah, there's a ton of different examples. Look, if a company takes my content and slaps their branding on it and tries to sell stuff, I'm taking. I don't even care about the DMCA at that point. That's you're. They know what they're doing. They think they won't get caught, or they get away with it enough to where it's more expensive for them to license content than it is to steal it. So, you know, they may do it 10 times, get caught once, and it's cheaper. The penalties for taking content aren't severe enough to prevent people from doing it. One. So where the DMCA has failed is, here's a perfect example. There's a company called News Nation in India. There's a News Nation in the US. Please don't confuse the two. One's a valid company that does valid news. News Nation in India. They used our videos, repurposed it. 53,000 and change was the last number of videos they had on YouTube of our content. They are milking it for every penny. They're using it for misinformation. They're claiming a tornado wiped out a town in Australia and then showing a tornado from 6 years ago that happened in Oklahoma. All right. It's absurd. All right. This is a major news outlet. So we caught them. We documented it. We did 30-something takedowns. It took like 16 before YouTube finally disabled the account or started to disable the account, warned them that their account was scheduled for termination. They reached out to us. We told them that we have to have a full inventory before we can possibly even discuss a settlement agreement. They filed counter notifications, submitting to jurisdiction in California. They immediately turned around and filed a lawsuit in India against us. So the people that have been stealing from us in absolutely insane. Put it this way, I have 500 videos on my YouTube channel. They had 53,000 of my videos on their channel. It's just insane. And they sued me for them stealing my stuff, named Google in the lawsuit, saying there's an anti-injunction lawsuit, basically saying, trying to get an India court to say we can't take their channel down. They did it under emergency pretenses on a vacated bench during Christmas. We answered them with we're answering their lawsuit. We're fighting it. So far, I've spent $33,000 fighting this lawsuit in India, just because of they're trying to smear our name. They're trying to get out of culpability, and we're going to continue to fight this. So that tab is continuing to run. And during this process, we've also filed a lawsuit in the US. So now we got to file a lawsuit in the US and fight them in the US as well. Now, I don't feel like the courts in India are going to give them any leeway, and haven't so far. They've been quite, and this company's been sued for the same thing before. But the courts in India have not given them any slack, and I don't expect them to. But it's kind of irrelevant. You know, in one way it's irrelevant, one way it's not. But I don't want them to be able to use a foreign anti-injunction lawsuit on false premises to be able to block our ability to go after them. It's not fair. It shouldn't happen that way. This isn't, I keep mentioning the word insanity because it's insane.
So let me ask you this, you know, as frustrating as using the DMCA notice and takedown system is, and believe me, I've been doing this long enough to talk to many creators and know how just insane, to use your word, it is at times. If the notice and takedown system just didn't exist for you, would you feel like you had any other recourse other than filing a very expensive lawsuit? Like, you know, do you have any other options, do you feel like, to combat infringement outside of filing a federal lawsuit?
So let me say this about the DMCA. It is outdated. It does need to be revised, but it's not bad. It's not bad. The premise of the DMCA is really quite simple. The problem is there are a few gray areas that are being exploited and undermined by giant corporations, not Fortune 500, but Fortune 5 companies. Okay. They're being exploited and undermined in a way that makes it almost useless. On the DMCA, there are some very easy fixes. once a DMCA action has been submitted, that action, that content cannot be altered. It can't be deleted, can't be made private, can't be removed, can't be edited until that item is actioned. It's very simple. 2, a repeat infringer policy needs to be identified. It needs to be clearly laid out in the open. Everybody needs to know the rules. Okay? If everybody knows the rules, then everybody's playing on a fair system. All right, transparency is a beautiful thing. Right now, I can have a company, and I do, mimic my logo, which is trademarked, mimic me, take all of my content and post it to social media, and I can't have them removed for repeat infringer policy because I'm only one account they're stealing from. So they don't consider that a repeat infringer. They're using my photo of me, they're using my logo, they're using my video, and they post everything I post. I can do takedown notices all day, every day, for now to the end of time, and those pages won't get removed because the social media companies have now said that DMCA takedowns to be considered a repeat infringer have to involve multiple accounts in order to protect these accounts from false takedowns, which is what the counter notification is designed. Okay, they're inserting their own little rules that make absolutely no sense. And what they are is not rules; they're loopholes, and they know they're loopholes because again, content's king. Repeat infringers. Right now, you can have an account terminated, and they will give you 7 days to advertise your new page to continue going. All right, to try and move as many followers over to your new page as possible. So it's not a termination; it's just a suspension. Okay, you're basically just having to move over pages, and they openly advertise this. They're allowing unverified entities with unknown identifications and unknown ties to open social media accounts in the terms of thousands of pages. All right, and they're not tie. They used to tie those infringements together. So if you have 3 infringements on this page and 3 on this page, then you know what? You're just a repeat infringer, and your whole thing goes away. Now it doesn't. So now it's kind of like the DEA's game with cartels. Cartels ship over, hundreds of thousands of tons of cocaine. Well, they have an expected loss rate. Well, so do these infringers. When they have 5,000 pages, if they lose 100, that's the cost of doing business. So it's so many little different things along the way that are, I don't think they're gray areas. I think they're just being exploited for commercial gain by tech companies. But those loopholes need to be closed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we agree completely. And one of the reasons I asked that last question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, for the rest of your question, I'm sorry, I get on these soapbox meetings. It's just such a. As far as if there wasn't the DMCA and there's not federal lawsuits, I don't exist. I don't exist. My business doesn't exist. No photographer exists. No videographer exists. It's impossible. It takes so long and so much work and so much viral content to break through that invisible ceiling to where you're big enough to where social media companies then want to protect you instead of exploit you, that there's no way any of this exists.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is, the DMCA is flawed, very much so. We agree, but sort of without it, the independent creator or small business creators out there who can't file lawsuits would be just completely without recourse or remedy against infringement.
Well, even with the DMCA, you're seeing the failure of media right now. Media is being replaced in real time by AI and misinformation. Okay, people no longer want the news; they want to confirm their belief with confirmational bias, and social media gives that to them with algorithms. AI is going to amplify that to extremes that we can't possibly fathom. So right now, your media organizations, why would you go to ABC News when you can go to some random guy with a blue check mark on Twitter who's got ABC News content along with CNN's and CBS and NBC and BBC and all the best stuff in one spot? There's zero acquisition costs for them. Okay, ABC News is out here trying to buy content, put people in the field. Well, that content just gets taken. and everybody goes to Raw's Alert on Twitter to get their news because they got all the best news in one spot. Well, that is destroying the news market. It's killing the media. It's killing journalism. Now these major media outlets are suffering financially. They can't afford to put those crews out. That you're not seeing real-time journalism like you used to. It's disappearing because they can't afford it. And as soon as they do get that big breaking story, they don't get the payout. It goes to everybody else that steals it. So they're being replaced, and they're being replaced by aggregators that have no background, that are unverified. Like, we don't know who they are. They could be, part of the Chinese government, they could be part of the Russian government. They could be somebody that's really good at aggregating news. I mean, you just don't know. There's no background. And there's a line of credibility that ABC News or NBC News or CNN has to maintain. They can't put, oh my God, this nuclear plant's going to explode, when it's not. But the guy on Twitter can. It doesn't hurt him because nobody knows who he is anyway. So you can't hurt somebody's reputation if they're an unknown person. So it's a whole bunch of things that all revolves around copyright and IP. And in order to tackle this misinformation and AI problem, which is, I believe, at the very bottom of an exponential curve that's about to explode, that you can't address those without addressing IP.
Yeah, it's really, the aggregators, when they mix in the legitimate content with the disinformation, and then the people following these accounts don't know, what's real and what's not. And of course, nothing is vetted. It's really a dangerous situation. I couldn't agree more. Another question I had, and this is sort of gets a little into more of the details of the DMCA. Have you ever tried to use what's known as a 512J motion to, it basically is to identify like an anonymous person online who you believe is infringing, that you can't basically go after in court because you don't know who that person is?
Yes,
Are you familiar with that? You have?
we've done it in mass, particularly with YouTube. What we're finding is some of these channels that are posting the same thumbnails and the same videos with the same titles at the same time across multiple pages are probably related. What the subpoenas are showing us is they are not. And what we're starting to find out is, even though they admit they are all working together and all the same people, that the subpoenas are showing that they're different people. And we couldn't figure it out for the longest time. But what's happening and how this is happening is they're using phishing operations to gain access to monetize YouTube channels. And then they're changing the names on the accounts to friends, family, relatives. So it may start out as somebody doing clay pottery or arts and crafts, and all of a sudden there's this violent switch that happens to where they're doing cataclysms and disasters and fake earthquakes and claiming Yellowstone erupted and being allowed to monetize that content. But we don't really know who the true actors are. We've filed subpoenas to find out who YouTube thinks they are. We find out who the AdSense accounts are tied to, but we're never really finding out who these people are.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, some cases we are.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is now charging us to pull the subpoenas. So we're fighting a corporation who's making more money off our content than us, and they're charging us to get subpoenas.
In my experience, the platforms are going to fight those subpoenas as hard as they can, and
It's
defend
not even
the
a fight.
Pardon?
They're joining this fight on the behalf of protecting piracy.
Right.
Under the guise of protecting their own best interests.
Under the guise of privacy and yeah, free speech. Believe me, I've been there. One other question I had is, have you ever sent a takedown notice directly to an internet service provider like a Verizon or a Cox, or, not like sort of skipped over the platform and gone right to the internet facilitator?
We have, so Alex Jones and InfoWars was repeatedly stealing our content. And I mean repeatedly, for a decade. And right when we got everything filed up and really organized, we're ready to drop a lawsuit, he went into bankruptcy with the Sandy Hook stuff. And at that point, I was just like, whatever. I'd rather the Sandy Hook victims get their money than me. And I just kind of stood down. But we sent a couple through. We were going to take the InfoWars offline because they were the last web hosting company that would host them. And unfortunately, those kind of fell on deaf ears. So it's a repeated. It seems like it doesn't really matter who we send these DMCA notices to. They make it as hard as possible to create any real action.
Yeah, the ISP. I didn't ask that question to suggest that it's any easier to go to these internet service providers. It certainly isn't. They make you jump through the same hoops, if not more. Um, and one of the reasons I brought that up is because we are a couple of our members have recently sued a number of different ISPs. Verizon, the most recent one, but there's one out of Texas, Grande Communications, as well as Cox. And basically, what's happened in what they've alleged in these lawsuits is that these ISPs have not implemented any kind of actual repeat infringer policy. And if they had implemented one, they don't abide by it. They receive hundreds, if not thousands, of takedowns about the same account. And they either have, unlimited strike policy, or they just don't ever suspend or terminate these accounts. And so the lawsuits then allege secondary liability, vicarious or contributory infringement on behalf of the service provider, who should no longer be shielded under the DMCA because they have not terminated or implemented a repeat infringer policy. And so one of the lawsuits that is going on now, we're trying to basically gather information from people like yourself about how, if ISPs are able to ignore what they're supposed to do under the DMCA and then can still sort of skirt secondary liability, then they can basically do whatever they want, and creators have absolutely no recourse. And so I appreciate you answering those questions. And
And I saw the lawsuit with the music industry versus Verizon recently. I mean, it's just hits so far home, it's not even funny. Here's my problem. It takes one person about 5 minutes to wreck my life and the life of 4 or 5 of my employees, or 4 of my employees, for 3 months. They can steal one piece of content, spray it all over 8 different platforms on a website. And in order for me to remove that content, one person can do this. One person can tie me up for 4 months, 5 months before we hit them enough to where it's gone. And we have hundreds of thousands of people doing it. So I've got to pick my battles. I don't have an option. The DMCA is pointless. All these laws are pointless as long as people are allowed to continue repeat infringing, and the social media companies are allowed to continue to profit off of piracy. It is impossible for me to ever try to get caught up.
Yeah. And I think that's really the point we're trying to make. Even the big guys, the record labels, even they can't make this system work for them. Like, what chance do the little guy have?
So I have no problem standing behind anything I say. What I have done is we have built a really good team. We have some really, really good people that really deeply care about this issue. And we document things to a level I don't think I've ever seen anybody else document. So while I say it takes one claim to tie us up, or one person to tie us up for 4 months, it does it because we are so punctual on our evidence that if anybody wants to question us, or if any of these social media companies want to come after me, they know who I am. So they're more than welcome to. I've got all the documentation to back it up. I'm hoping that they want to try and help us, because without us, they don't exist. This content doesn't exist. They're destroying their own ecosystem. I understand that CEOs get huge bonuses for stock performances in the short term, but these companies need to really be looking out for their long-term interests, because You may think you're too big to fail, but you push too far and people are going to push back. And I feel like they pushed too far for the last 4 years. It's time for creators to join forces and it's time for the big labels, the big music labels, and the big production companies to look down and bring the floor up with the little guys too. It's time for that to happen and us to join forces and be as big as they are and flex our muscle.
Yeah, it's mind blowing that the tech platforms haven't sort of. I mean, I think they understand, but at least admitted that without creators, they are nothing. Um, Unfortunately, this has been going on pretty much since the dawn of the internet, and now we're seeing it most recently in AI, where they're just scraping everything they can to build their models, and just like you said, without what they want to scrape, they're nothing. But yet they don't want to compensate or recognize, the contributions of creators. So I wish I wish I had a better a positive outlook on it, but it's these lawsuits and the advocacy and policy work that hopefully we can do that might make it a little bit better for people like you. But
Well,
yeah,
no, I appreciate y'all's work on this matter because I mean look, I'm watching fellow storm chasers and videographers and photographers sleep in cars, file bankruptcy, commit suicide. This is a real issue that affects real people, real businesses. And until it's addressed, it's just going to continue to worsen. The internet, of course, from day one has always been a haven for piracy. But when you start talking about AI amplifying that and making it so much faster and the availability of high-speed internet to countries throughout the world, you are opening Pandora's box for some of these countries that don't have a lot of opportunity to see a really easy access to earn income. And then when social media platforms open up monetization to random people with no background check, no verification process in place, it's like opening the prison doors to a bank. I mean, and then be like, when it happens, they know what's going on.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think we've seen some of this weird messaging from tech companies too of, creators love our tools and creators use our tools and they need us, and we're for creators, and we're starting to see this messaging kind of move over to AI companies as well. Where they're like, creators love our tools, they use our tools all the time, and stuff like that, without also acknowledging the fact that this is all built off of the backbones of creators whose content you did not, license, get authorization or permission for, or you just simply scraped without them even knowing. And so it's really, yeah, it's really disingenuous as a whole. And believe us, like we've been rolling our eyes at these messages for a very long time, and we continue to fight against it. But as you point out, now that AI technologies are on the rise, I mean, you said, we're maybe sort of at the bottom of the exponential curve. I think we're already on the curve, honestly, with the amount of ingestion and scraping issues that have been going on with AI, and just the misinformation that's been coming out, even now. So we're definitely on the rise with that. I did have, another kind of question. My kind of questions, I think, are a little bit less DMCA focused and more of sort of, if you had any advice for a creator who's, up and coming, or, wants to do what you want to do, is there kind of any advice you have for them in terms of either their craft or, how to go about this business, about copyright law, just anything you want to pass on?
There's a ton of messages here. The first message is, hey, if you want to make a living doing this, then move to Mexico and hit right click and save and re-upload it and just go to town, because that's an easy way to make money and make a living, and you won't have all these stresses. The correct answer is watermark your material, It's not going to stop it. It may not even slow it down. At least give you a little bit extra protection and some litigation. Document, register. I spend $80,000 a year registering content. I spend 30% of my gross revenue for my company registering content. The way it's set up for video is you have to register everything. So if I'm in a situation and I post a news update to Twitter with a short video clip, and then later post something to Facebook, and then later that day post something to YouTube, or post multiple videos to YouTube, each one of those has to be registered separately. Each one of those is 65 bucks out of my pocket. It takes about 20 minutes to do. Each one of those takes months to get in. But it's the cost of doing business. It's just another added expense and another added problem on our end than tracking all these registrations. But register your work,
But
particularly the ones
Brandon,
that
if I could interrupt you for a second, you're saying you need to register the same video just because you're posting on different platforms?
No, it'd be it'll be different videos shot 20 minutes apart.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Okay.
For photos, it's 90-day windows. You can bulk register. For videos, it's not. And I know we're probably overloading the copyright office with registrations. And since we started doing all this, they came out with a proposal. It's like, hey, what if we do for these news and media creators windows for like one event to where you can register everything for one event? I'm like, well, yeah, that would make sense. But, you know, we'll see when that happens. But in the meantime, I have one employee that does nothing but register my works all freaking day, gets them in, scans them, uploads them, documents them. I've got one credit card dedicated for nothing but copyright registrations. It's again, we're going to use the word insane. Imagine owning a convenience store and having to do a $65 registration for every product on your shelf. It's so stupid, but you know, it's what it is. But you know, that registration offers you a lot of protections, and it just takes one video that could change your life, or what used to would change your life. And back when we all lived in the real world, it you know, you get that one shot, that one video, it can change your life. It still can. It's going to take a lot more work, and you're going to have to go after people, and you're going to have to live a miserable life for about 3 years. But it can. It still can. But you better have that registration, or else it's going to change a lot of other people's lives instead.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just as you point out, your frustrations with sort of the registration system, I mean, it's unfortunate because as you said, registration is required for you to even file a lawsuit. So it's not really an option for copyright owners, you know, who are those business owners. But also just pointing out, like, there are inefficiencies within the copyright registration system that prevent creators from fully enforcing and really doing their business. I mean, like you said, you have one person dedicated to just doing registrations. That should not be the case. I mean, you're detracting from your ability to continue creating and to do your business. And you know, there needs to be better flexible options for creators to register their works in different, you know, as bundles, or just have different pricing tiers, or, you know, subscription models, or just something that's a little bit more accommodating, especially for, you know, creators such as yourself who are a little bit more prolific, who don't register, you know, one work a year, but multiple works, you know, even in a given month, yeah, from an event.
In fact, I'm sitting on my copyright registrations right now.
But yeah, it's just I think this is one other aspect that is really important for creators to understand is the registration process, how important it is, but also kind of the frustrations behind the current system we have, and you know, how we can kind of improve those inefficiencies. And then
I'm sitting on 90% of my content that's never been published. I don't have time to create content. I spend 85 to 90% of every hour for my business on copyright, whether it be registrations, DMCA takedowns, lawsuits, whatever. It's I feel like I picked up a camera and learned all this stuff and learned forecasting and learned all this disaster stuff just to run a law firm. It's not, no offense, it's just not what I want to do. I'd rather, you probably don't want to be sitting in a tornado, but I do. It's just, but I don't have that option anymore. That option's been taken from me.
Well, and that's the thing. I think you know, expecting creators to DIY, expecting creators to do all of these things that are not part of their creative process is just, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, on that note though, have you heard of the Copyright Claims Board? Have you like thought about filing any cases with it or anything like that? Because that's the small claims copyright court where you're able to bring, you know, your copyright infringement claims, DMCA, misinformation claims that are worth no more than $30,000, you know, a case. But I mean, again, to your point of like you're a creator, but you're basically a law firm.
So
this
here's the
is kind
thing.
of another aspect, yeah.
If there's no repeat infringer policy, these channels, these infringers have learned that they don't have to counter notify. And if they don't counter notify, there's no jurisdiction. So until you fix that simple issue, it's just a matter of who do we file against? You know, people that aren't counter notifying, do we try and go after people in Pakistan when there's no jurisdiction for it? You know, they may steal, they may be a repeat infringer, but they're until they're forced by these social media companies who are skirting the law to show up in court, it's just going to keep continuing. We have considered using a small claims court on some of these. I've considered to have a little fun with it as well and just overload it with 100,000 cases and be like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, so make it your problem. I've considered that as well. The monetary aspect of it would be a pretty hard pill to swallow. But I do have some investors that want to break the system. So, you know, we may do that. We may drop 100,000 lawsuits in the small claims court and let the court say, hey, this is too much. That system's broken. You know, creators are saying it. You know, artists are saying it. Attorneys are saying it. If the court starts saying it too, somebody's got to listen at some point. That's our hope. I don't know. It may seem like a Hail Mary, but when you're desperate, you start throwing Hail Marys.
Yeah, definitely. I think you know, we monitor the copyright claims for the CCB as well. And I think it is really telling that since it opened, you know, I think like 2 years ago at this point. Yeah, 2 years ago at this point. I mean, the cases just haven't stopped. You see a lot of interest in creators filing their cases. And then you also have a couple, you know, copyright owners who have repeatedly used the small claims court to, you know, try to resolve some of the infringements that are occurring out there and really maxing out their capabilities to do that like every calendar year. There's one in particular called Johan Promotions, and they are the exclusive licensees of UFC content. So what they've been doing is that they've been, you know, maxing out their, I think it's like 10 to 12 cases a year, a calendar year they can file. But it's just so funny because once they've filed their maximum number of cases for the calendar year, they just like wait a month. And then once that calendar year is like over right away, they like go back in and file a bunch of cases. But I think it just goes to show.
I didn't know there was a max, so that takes that idea out. So
yeah. Well, but I think it goes to show your point of like,
well, what's 10 or 12
there's
cases going
lots
to
of
do?
infringement. Yeah. Like, what are you going to do?
Look, we had a federal judge in California tell our attorneys that we were rushing too much stuff through and pushing too much stuff through. And our attorney had to look at the judge and say, Your Honor, this is 0.0001% of what we dealt with this year. And she can't comprehend that. Just, you know, what do you do? Like we're rushing it through, like we're the bad guys here, or get labeled copyright trolls.
Right. They're going to call you a troll because
Oh,
you are trying to protect your content. Yeah, I've seen it a million times. It's so
it's so
frustrating.
insane. Insane, 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 insane. I'm gonna keep saying insane. It's
Um, well,
because the other words are probably not welcome on your social media platform.
right, right. So we really, really, really appreciate your time and your story.